Hello everyone, my name is Sanjeev. In this video, I will demo how to configure Inbound TLS context for Anypoint Flex Gateway deployed in local mode. I will add API instance and TLS policy using declarative configuration to the Flex Gateway. I have a Docker desktop in my local. I have deployed the Anypoint Flex Gateway in Docker container on port 8082. I have deployed the Flex Gateway in local mode. I have a Spring Boot API, Greeting API, and it's deployed on port 8092, and we can access this API on HTTP. So let me access this on browser. Here I'm using my laptop IP address, and I can access this Spring Boot API from browser on HTTP protocol, and I am getting the response greeting, hi there, this is greeting API. I have added this Spring Boot API to the Flex Gateway, and I have added this using declarative configuration. I have created a file greeting API instance, and here I have provided the declarative configuration to add the Spring Boot API to the Flex Gateway. So I have added the greeting API, and this is the configuration. Type is API instance, kind is API instance, and this is the name of API instance, greeting API Flex Gateway instance. And here I am providing the Flex Gateway path. So this is the port 8082, and this is the base path. And here I am providing the mapping. Let me change the name here as well. So here I will say greeting API, and this is the address where I am accessing the API, so that I copy it from here. So this is the path of greeting Spring Boot API, and this is the route / greeting, and / API is appended before the / greeting. So I'm able to access this greeting API using this path. Let me save it again because we did some changes. This will automatically reflect here. Changes has been dynamically picked up. This is the upstream API greeting Spring Boot API, and here is the API instance, Flex Gateway port, and base path. Let me invoke this API from browser. So here I am directly invoking the greeting API. Now I will invoke through Flex Gateway. Localhost 8082 API / greeting. Click enter, and we are getting the response. Here we are getting the response directly. Here we are going through Flex Gateway, and we are accessing this API on HTTP protocol, and we are getting the response. Now I will apply the TLS context, inbound TLS context on this API instance, and I will secure the transport layer. So communication should be on HTTPS. So let me go to the documentation. Here is the documentation for configuring the Flex Gateway in local mode. And here in this page, it is described how to configure TLS context for Flex Gateway in local mode. So it have multiple sections, one section for Linux service, another for Docker container. We will use the section for Docker container because we have deployed the Flex Gateway in Docker container in local mode. So here is the example how to configure the policy binding declarative configuration. So I will copy this sample, and I will modify for our greeting API. Let me create a new file, and I will give the name greeting TLS config.byaml. Let me open it and save as. Okay, so we got a by ML file type. Let me remove this one. Now I will copy the sample from the MuleSoft documentation here, and let me paste it here. So this configuration, dynamic configuration, is for policy binding. Here we need to provide the name, and here we need to provide the for which instance this should apply. So let me copy the instance name, API instance name. So this is the API instance name that we provide for getting API. I will copy it here in fact, target ref, name. So this is the API instance where this policy binding should apply. Let me change the name of this policy binding configuration. Greeting API HTTPS TLS. That's the name I'm giving to this policy binding declarative configuration. And policy type is TLS, inbound TLS. Here I will provide the private key. Here I will provide the public key certificate. ALPN default is fine. Min version, max version is fine for our case as well. And here are the ciphers. So we have cipher for these TLS versions, and it should be fine. Now let me copy the private key and public key. Let me go to I will go to the certs folder, and here is my private key and public key for the certificate. Let me open it. So I will copy this private key and paste it here. Now I will copy the public certificate, and that I will copy it here under cert. I have to indent the private key certificate and public key certificate. I will indent the private key and public key certificate both. So let me pause this video, and I will start the video again when I'm done with the indentation. I have indented the private key and I have indented the public certificate as well. Let me save it. Now I will go to the Explorer. Here I will create a new folder, app. Now I will copy the greeting TLS config declarative configuration for policy binding, and I will paste it inside the app directory. Let me go to the Flex Gateway. So it applied the policy automatically. We can see that adding policy, and it's getting added to this API instance, and it's adding inbound TLS policy. So inbound TLS policy has been added to this API instance that is invoking this greeting API on port 8082. Now I will go to the browser. Here we were invoking using HTTP protocol, and we were able to invoke before, but now if we will try to invoke, it should not work. See, we are getting error because we added the inbound TLS context to this API instance on Flex Gateway, and we are invoking this API through the Flex Gateway, so we are not able to invoke on HTTP. Now if we will invoke this API using HTTPS, we should be able to invoke it. So I will change the protocol from HTTP to HTTPS, hit enter, and here we are able to access the API. We are getting the response. We can observe the certificate. So here is the detail of certificate. We can check the subject. So this is the subject, local host, organization unit, state and country. And if we will go to our folder, I will open the certificate from here as well. Open. I will go to the detail. I will go to the subject, and we can see that it's same subject that we are observing here on the browser. Localhost, IT, ABC Inc., location, state and country, everything is same because same certificate. So we have configured the HTTPS inbound TLS on this API instance using policy binding declarative configuration. Using policy binding, we were able to configure the inbound TLS context policy to this API instance, and we have secured the Spring Boot API using Flex Gateway on local mode. I hope you understood how to create the policy binding to configure the inbound TLS policy on API instance, and how to secure the API by enabling the HTTPS on transport layer. This is all in this video. If you like this video, click the like button and subscribe the channel. Thanks for watching. Thank you very much.